Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for coming at this early hour. I have the honor to declare open the 24th session of the Working Group on the Universal Periodic Review, UPR. During the past 8 years of operation, the UPR has proven its fundamental value as an objective, transparent, and constructive mechanism by engaging all United Nations members. With the second cycle of the UPR coming to an end, we should be mindful of what and how we need to prepare for the third cycle. This year's UPR sessions are important in that they can give us a chance to ponder ways and means for how we can further enhance the validity and effectiveness of the UPR in the third cycle. In this sense, I would like to invite the delegations of states under review and the member states and observer states of the Human Rights Council, while taking active part in the review, to observe and think through ways to further improve the mechanism. Before we begin with the first review, I would like to recall some of the basic principles guiding our work and to invite all delegations to respect the principles and objectives of the Universal Periodic Review, in line with the paragraphs 3 and 4 of the Annex of Human Rights Council Resolution 5/1. It is important to preserve the cooperative, inclusive, and transparent nature of the Universal Periodic Review process. Although the working group is an intergovernmental body, the participation of civil society in the entire UPR process is well established, in particular at the national level and during the plenary sessions of the Human Rights Council. In this regard, I would like to refer to Human Rights Council Resolution 16/21, which strongly rejects any act of intimidation or reprisal against individuals and groups who cooperate or have cooperated with the United Nations and its representatives and mechanisms in the field of human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall now proceed with a review of Namibia. In accordance with the Resolution 5/1, the review is based on the national report, the compilation report as prepared by the OHCHR, and a summary of stakeholders' information, also prepared by the OHCHR. I now have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Albert Kawana, Minister of Justice of Namibia, to introduce the report. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The Republic of Namibia is honored to attend and participate in this session of the UPR Working Group as a state under review. On behalf of my delegation, I would like to congratulate you, Mr. President, Ambassador Choi, and your Bureau for your recent election to steer the work of this Council. I would also like to express my delegation's appreciation to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights for the well-coordinated manner in which this review is being conducted. Mr. President, Namibia is a proponent of the UPR since its inception in 2006. We value the distinct, universal, and peer-review nature of this mechanism, which is supported by many countries. We believe that this platform is conducive for engagement between states to address issues of concern. To this extent, Mr. President, Namibia is proud to have submitted a second cycle report which reflects data on the implementation of recommendations and other progress made. Our report is also indicative of the challenges we face as a nation in the implementation of some of the recommendations. During the first cycle review in 2011, Namibia received 120 recommendations 90 of these 120 recommendations were accepted. During the June 2011 session of the Human Rights Council, Namibia communicated an acceptance of a further 24 recommendations. Mr. President, Namibia attaches great importance to strengthening and promoting human rights for all in our country. We remain committed to deliver on the promises we made to build on the progress made during our era of peace and stability, and move into the era of economic emancipation and prosperity for all, where no Namibian shall be left behind. Mr. President, Namibia is the driest country in sub-Saharan Africa. We are frequently exposed to the brunt of global economic climate changes in the form of droughts and floods. As a result, we are forced to inter alia redirect resources from education, health, infrastructure development to drought relief, so that our people cannot die as a result of drought. Namibia continues to do well on media freedom. Reporters Without Borders World Press Freedom Index of 2015 ranked Namibia 17th out of 180 countries in the world and first in Africa in the area of media pluralism and independence, respect for safety and freedom of journalists, and legislative, institutional, and infrastructural environment in which the media operates. Mr. President, the overriding challenges Namibia faces today is to effectively tackle and overcome the problem of unemployment and persistent poverty of its citizens. Based on the Gini coefficient, Namibia is one of the most unequal societies in the world, with a huge gap between the rich and the poor, which we inherited at independence. Namibia is nevertheless regarded as an upper middle income country due mainly to its per capita gross national income, relatively world-class infrastructure, sophisticated banking system, good coverage of medical services, stable democracy, and many other amenities reminiscent of a developed country. Since Namibia has been rated as an upper middle income country, we have experienced the withdrawal of many international social partners, which aggravates the challenges we face. Mr. President, Namibia continues to place great emphasis on the rights and welfare of children. To this effect, Parliament passed the Child Care and Protection Act last year. The Act deals with aspects such as juvenile justice, adoption, and protection from harmful and cultural practices, to mention but a few. The first children's advocate in Namibia was also appointed in the Office of the Ombudsman last year. To demonstrate our commitment to enhance access to quality education, the government in 2014 implemented free universal primary education in public schools, and this has been extended to secondary education in public schools this year. President, I would like to state that this UPR session once again demonstrates the international community's commitment to the promotion and protection of human rights. Namibia will steadfastly play its role in ensuring that the aims of the working group are met. I will stop at this juncture, Mr. President, to give enough time to the states to engage in the dialogue, and we will be happy to answer any additional questions put to our delegation. I thank all the states for their constructive intervention and recommendations. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank His Excellency for this statement and for his presence with us this morning. We shall now start our interactive dialogue. Before giving the floor to delegations for their questions and comments, I'd like to remind you that the speaking time will be 1 minute and 15 seconds for all. Thank you. Next is the distinguished representative of the Philippines.
The Philippines warmly welcomes the delegation of Namibia to the second cycle of the UPR. The Philippines lauds the commitment of Namibia in promoting and protecting human rights in accordance with the international standards as reflected in its National Human Rights Plan. We note that this plan was prepared through a participatory and inclusive process facilitated by its Ombudsman. We acknowledge Namibia's achievement in providing universal access to health services in its efforts to pursue major improvements in access to education for its people. We appreciate the recognition of Namibia on its national report that gender-based violence is a serious concern. We welcome Namibia's national gender policy in its commitment to eradicate all forms of gender-based violence. We remain hopeful that Namibia would pursue its commitment to ratify other international human rights treaties that is not yet a state party. My delegation recommends the following: allocate adequate funding and provide necessary human resources to fully implement policies and programs aimed at eradicating all forms of gender-based violence, and consider ratifying the International Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers and Their Families and ILO Convention 189. Finally, Mr. President, we wish Namibia a successful review. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next on the list is the distinguished representative of Portugal.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Portugal warmly welcomes the delegation of Namibia. Portugal applauds the adoption of the National Gender Policy and the National Gender Plan of Action, and we recommend that Namibia continues to pay close attention to the full realization of the rights of women and girls. Portugal also recommends that Namibia extend a standing invitation to the Council's special procedures. Mr. President, Portugal is concerned with cases of discrimination against minorities, such as the indigenous San people. We therefore recommend that Namibia fully protects the human rights of persons belonging to minorities, including their rights to water, sanitation, land, education, health, as well as access to all public services in an equal and just manner. Portugal welcomes the adoption of the important Child Care and Protection Bill and the plans to promote access to education for children. We recommend that Namibia ensures equal access to education to all children. Finally, we recommend the ratification of the Convention Against Torture and the optional protocol thereto, the optional protocol to ICSCR, and the optional protocol to the CRC on the communications procedure. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. President. Kenya extends a warm welcome to the delegation of Namibia, and we thank the Honorable Minister and his team for the comprehensive and thorough presentation of their national report. Kenya welcomes the positive efforts undertaken by the government to implement recommendations arising from the last cycle. We commend in particular the government's efforts to provide free legal aid, as well as steps taken to strengthen the office of the Ombudsman, which we note now enjoys Category A status. Kenya wishes Namibia a successful outcome from this UPR meeting, and in this regard, we make the following two recommendations. Firstly, to align the provisions of the nationality law with international human rights standards, so as to enable children born in the territory of Namibia whose parents are unknown to acquire nationality of Namibia. And secondly, to update the constitutional provisions regarding the definition of a child to be in harmony with the overall definition in the CRC. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I understand that the delegation of Namibia wants to speak again at this point. So I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Albert Kawana, and his delegation. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. President. On the issue of poverty that has been raised, may I give the floor to the Ambassador with the concurrence of the President.
Yes, Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, Honorable Minister. The poverty eradication is very much at the heart of my government, and several measures were put in place to reduce poverty with a view to eventually eradicate it. In addition to what was stated earlier, we had a national conference on wealth redistribution and poverty eradication, which was held in October 2015, and during which our President declared full-scale war on poverty in Namibia. He declared that the first step in the fight against poverty is the recognition that all Namibians deserve a dignified life. A dignified life, as articulated by him, includes decent employment, shelter, water, sanitation, education, and access to health care. We submit that it's not only our social grants that are effective in reducing poverty. Research by the World Bank has shown that the Namibian budget is indeed pro-poor. This is in part because of the generous social grants, but also because of our tax system that is progressive in nature. In other words, the more one earns, the more tax one pays, while those who earn less than 50,000 Namibia dollars per year are exempted from paying income tax. It is also because of the zero rating of the value-added tax on basic foodstuff. Going forward, government will introduce a solidarity tax in the next budget that will call on each income making Namibian above a certain threshold to make a contribution towards a fund that will be earmarked for poverty eradication activities. I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, there were also issues raised regarding extending an invitation to the United Nations Special Procedure Mandate. May I give the floor to Mr. Limbo with the concurrence of the President.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Mr. President, in response to the question on standing invitation to the United Nations Special Procedure Mandate holders, Namibia would like to respond as follows. During the first cycle review of Namibia, this recommendation was rejected based on the grounds that our government would like to exercise its rights to decide if and when such invitations would be extended. As a member of the Human Rights Council, Namibia attaches great importance to the work of the Special Procedure Mandate holders, and in that light, our government had the privilege to welcome 3 mandate holders in Namibia since our last review, namely, the Special Rapporteurs on the human right to safe drinking water and sanitation, the rights of indigenous peoples, and on extreme poverty in 2011 and 2012 respectively.
Mr. President, there was an issue raised by a number of states regarding Namibia's position on the International Criminal Court. Maybe on this one, let me take this opportunity to respond. And as we always say, Namibia is a product of the international community. We gained our independence through the assistance of the United Nations, and we value that assistance. We will continue to cooperate with the international community. Most of our international relations are done through multilateral approach. In this regard, as distinguished delegates may be aware, the African Union passed a resolution in 2013 regarding the ICC. We are subject to that resolution. However, we will continue to protect, defend human rights in our country. We will continue to work with the international community to make sure that human rights abuses are not condoned. However, from time to time, through the auspices of the African Union, we will be able to assess our position. But as I said, we will work together with the African Union to find an amicable solution to this problem. I submit, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Then we will continue with our interactive dialogue. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Lao People's Democratic Republic.
Mr. President, The Lao delegation warmly welcomes the delegation of Namibia to the 24th session of the UPR Working Group and would like to thank them for the presentation of the national report. My delegation commends the Namibian government on its efforts on the promotion and protection of human rights in the country and appreciates the update on the implementation of accepted recommendations of the first UPR. We welcome the launching of the National Human Rights Action Plan for the period 2015-2019 to improve human rights situation in the country. The Lao PDR notes the progress made by Namibia in promoting freedom of expression, improving education, access to healthcare services, and addressing poverty reduction. While wishing Namibia every success in its second UPR, my delegation would like to make the following recommendations for consideration. 1, to continue to strengthen educational system and to ensure equal access of disabled children to education. And 2, to improve mechanisms of legal and social protection of children against sexual violence. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Brazil was the last speaker on our list. Please note that all delivered statements will be posted on the UPL extranet. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Alberta Kawana, for his final remarks.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. There was an issue regarding access to land by indigenous people. May I give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Limbo, with the concurrence of the President.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Mr. President, I would like to respond to the question regarding access to land and land distribution for indigenous people. Namibia has no national legislation that deals directly with indigenous people, and the term marginalized communities is used in Namibia. One of the 1991 Land Conference resolutions was that the land rights of disadvantaged communities should receive special protection. I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, in conclusion, may I take this opportunity on behalf of my delegation to once again thank you for your excellent leadership in steering the discussions today. We also wish to thank all the delegations that attended and participated during our review. Your valuable input, comments and recommendations will serve as a guide to us in our pursuit to better the lives of our people. Feedback to questions which we were not able to address today will be provided to you not later than this 32nd session of the Human Rights Council. That is our pledge. Mr. President, once again, I would like to thank you for your sterling leadership, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. I thank His Excellency and the delegation of Namibia for the presentation and participation in this review. The report of the review will be prepared by the members of the Troika, namely the representatives of the Republic of Korea, Morocco, and Latvia. In accordance with the new procedure implemented in 2015, the recommendations section will be distributed on Wednesday, 20 January at 12:30, for adoption on Friday, 22 January at 3 p.m. The full report, including the summary section, will be circulated by email on 5 February 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our meeting.